Hello and welcome back to Off the Fence. It's a very happy new year from me to you guys. Thank you very much as always for tuning in. But this is our first episode of 2022 and what an episode it is. It's a bumper extended edition because we have so much to get through from the Christmas racing festivals on both sides of the Irish Sea. And coming up in this episode, well, we look back at the King George and the Savills Chase. How did those races affect the Gold Cup market at Cheltenham? We delve into the Stayers Hurdler division. Who impressed Barry and Tony? We'll find out very shortly. And of course, we cover the novice hurdlers and the novice chasers to boot. This is an episode not to be missed. So much coming your way very shortly. Hello and welcome to Off the Fence. This is your weekly rundown of all things jump racing. You know the drill by now. Give us a like on all social media platforms and subscribe on the At The Races YouTube channel so you don't miss a single episode of Off the Fence. But that's all the housekeeping out the way very quickly because we have so much to catch up on. Obviously a new year and we've missed about 10 days of top class racing over the festive period. And I'm joined as always by Barry Geraghty and Tony Keenan to give you a rundown, to look back, but also to look forward to see where the results lead us, where these horses will go, and of course focusing in on the Cheltenham Festival and beyond as we count down now to the big week in March. Very quick hello, Barry, how's your Christmas period? You were very busy, I saw. I
was busy, yeah, but I'd plenty of time to tuck in and treat myself and got fat and everything like that.
All the usual. Same applies to me too. And Tony, I think you were a bit less busy.
Yeah, not so good here. I've been isolating basically since about the 20th of December. So look, I haven't caught it yet, but everyone in my family has. So I don't think anyone wants my bloody boring COVID stories. But yeah, I thought the last 10 days have been brilliant. There's been more happen really in the last 10 days than happened in probably the 2 months beforehand. An awful lot of stuff to look back on and probably things to learn for the next 2 or 3 months.
Absolutely, yeah, bang on. When you sort of build up to the festive period and then it all comes at once and it's like a feast of racing. Let's get stuck straight in and we're going to go straight to the King George on Boxing Day, Stephen's Day, whatever you want to call it. And of course, it's been well documented by now. We were really looking forward to it. It's a top class lineup for the big race. And then the outsider of the lot wins it in Tornado Flower under a brilliant ride by Danny Mullins. But Barry, ultimately, for me, the race disappointed. Where do you stand on it?
You could say that, but you know, Kempton's a very different track from Cheltenham and it's a different 3 mile test. And if you look at the superstars in the King George over the years, Cotto Star and Desert Orchid being the two. Cotto Star ran the Champion Chase, he won Tingle Creeks. Desert Orchid ran the Champion Hurdle. So they're proper speed horses. And the 3 miler, the old fashioned 3 miler, he can get caught out. And for me, I was against Manila Indo going into the race just because I thought the track was too sharp for him. And they paid the price because the easiest way to get a horse beaten is go too fast. And the field were going too fast for the first circuit, but Manila Indo especially because his natural cruising speed is over for 3 1/4 around Cheltenham. It's not for a flat quick 3 mile around Kempton.
But it's rare you see Rachel get it that wrong, really. And I think we can say that she got it wrong on the day in terms of the pace they went early. What do you think happened there? Do you think Frodon drew her into a bit of an early pace battle? Or do you think that was always the tactics, but they just got it wrong? I don't really understand why, because we could all see watching it on that they'd gone very fast.
Yeah, no, it's just they got drawn into it. Frodon didn't get it as easy in front this year as he did last year, which we knew going into the race. And you know, Manila Indo's trump card is stamina, so they rode him forward, they rode him aggressively. She took on Frodon, jumping the last with a circuit to go, and pressed on, and soon paid the price. So you know, that was the collapse, if you like. But then the horses who were ridden from off the pace, you know, Tornado Flyer coming from way back, St. Calvados, he was last for most of the race. And then with about 5 to jump, he flies up on the outside. Like, Gavin Sheehan is a brilliant rider and I'm a big fan, but I'd have given him 6 penalty points for speeding here. You know, he got involved way too soon. Clan des Obeaux went with him from the fourth last, and Danny Mullins just used his brain and just sat and waited and waited. But he's on a horse who was second in the John Durkin last year, a natural speed horse for this race. So he was able to travel, and albeit you might question his level of ability or his class, but at this trip, on this kind of track, it was ideal for him and it played into his hands. But Danny was brilliant, dropped in, took his time. Both him and St. Calvados were a long way off the pace early on, and it was a brilliant ride for Danny because he just kept waiting and creeping.
I think when I was watching it actually and watching the replays, it really reminded me of something you said on this show, I think last season, where you were talking about the difference, or you and Tony were having the discussion about different riding, the way races pan out differently in Ireland versus England. And obviously I'm sure it was you, Barry, who said in Ireland it's sort of like the biggest sin to go too soon. And obviously Rachel was up in the front vanguard, but we sort of covered that. But in terms of, it was like Brian and Danny who really were not drawn into that early pace battle, which I thought was really interesting. But to move on, which horse would you be taking out of the race going forward as a Gold Cup horse from now?
Yes, I'm not sure, of the first few that there's Gold Cup contenders there, so Clan des Obeaux could come back again maybe. But Manila Indo, I believe, I read afterwards that Henry said he came home, he was very shook. And that's not surprising because he had a tough time, put the cheek piece on him as well, and that's going to make him go harder than he needs to too. So if he bounces back, he's possibly at the minute going to be way overpriced for the Gold Cup, being last year's winner, because Cheltenham's his thing. All his form is on staying tracks, and he's his form at Cheltenham, Albert Bartlett, RSA Gold Cup, it's similar to Bobsworth. That's top level, obviously.
Absolutely. And Tony, we can focus in on Ireland and the big open 3 mile staying chase over there with the Savills Chase, and kudos to you for tipping up Galvin under a brilliant ride by Davy Russell on the day, gets upon the line to do a Plutard. Talk us through what you made of the race. Is Galvin a genuine Gold Cup horse, or should, if the race be rerun, a Plutard be winning that race?
I thought it couldn't be a more different race tactically than the King George, which was where they went really hard from very early stages. The Leopardstown race was just very, very tactical. Slow gallop. My takeaway from it is that the front two, the Galvin and the Plutard, were probably better than the form, and that in through run race I'd expect them to pull further clear. Camboy probably a little bit flatter. I don't think Janadil stayed at 3 miles even at that kind of a tepid pace. Thought Rachel Blackmore was her usual ruthless self on a Plutard, coming after the second last, Barry and Davy Russell, and I think it's a massive credit to Galvin that he was able to extract himself from that pocket, come round a Plutard and still quicken up to win it, and they really were quickening from the second last. Now that's fair going out of a horse that won a national hunt chase, trying to catch a horse that's already won a grade 1 or 2 miles. Now I don't think Galvin's a typical national hunt chase horse, because that national hunt chase was slowly run last year, but I thought it was a hell of an effort out of him, and I think it's just all positives with him at the moment. He's got a mix of speed and stamina. He's got proven track form around Cheltenham. I thought they learned a bit as well last week, that they were able to ride him forward, which hasn't been a thing with him in the past. I thought he coped with that very well. I thought he jumped better than he ever has. And look, if the ground is anyway decent on the Friday of Cheltenham, I can't see him not being involved. Like Manel Indo, to me, I wouldn't want anything to do with him for Cheltenham. I actually think he's a pretty bad price for the Gold Cup at the moment. Like the cheek pieces went on him in Kempton, and I was really fancying him, and that was just a massive red flag for me. Henry de Bromhead never puts cheek pieces on a good horse that's in its prime. He did use them on size in Europe going back in his later years when he was 11 and 12 to kind of sharpen him up. But Manel Indo was coming off a season where he's just won a Gold Cup. He's putting cheek pieces on him 9 months down the line. I didn't like that at all. So I don't really want anything to do with him. Yeah, I would think the Leopardstown form is going to be far more impactful for the Gold Cup. And just to mention one horse there from the King George, I thought St. Calvados are an absolute screamer. What Barry said there, like that Gavin Sheehan sitting forward, he seems to have lost the job off the back of that ride. So with a certain degree of sympathy from that. That's tough now, but he got there way too soon. The horse just powers through the race like a real 2.5 miler. He'd be an interesting horse to just going down and trip. But as regards the blue ribbon itself, I'd say it's more likely that Leopardstown will be significant. And arguably, I think we'll come to this, maybe events in Tremor as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like you're very much with Galvin as a Gold Cup prospect, at least to be sort of in there at the end pitching. Barry, what was your view on the Savills chase, and would you take a Plutard to reverse the form with Galvin back at Cheltenham, or do you think that he's a genuine Gold Cup horse?
No, I think he is a genuine Gold Cup horse. I'd say he was fortunate on the day, but Cheltenham is a different story. I think Cheltenham will play more to his strengths. He's obviously won there before, but I think he's going to be better for it. And as Tony says, give him decent ground as well. But I thought at Plutard, Rachel made a lot of ground. She got put wide and into an ordinary position. Because he jumped to his right and kept her out there. She was 4 wide going to the third last, and she made a lot of ground going round them all from there to the turn in. And being honest, if she had stayed following Galvin rather than stick Davy in the pocket and just followed him down the straight and rode him like the 2 mile horse he is and has the pace for 2 mile, I think she would have beaten him. So, but that doesn't mean necessarily that it's going to happen the same in Cheltenham, as we discussed earlier. Different track, stiffer track, maybe a stronger pace as well, which you'd imagine too.
Okay, so Tony, let's bring it back to you and bring in Albin Photo, obviously winning in Tranmere for the 10th year in a row, it seems, in what looked, I mean, in the end, just seemed like a sort of morning schooling, really, with all 4 runners being from Willie Mullins' yard. What did you make of his reappearance? What did you make of the race? And I think he's still, I think right now, actually, Albin Photo represents a bit of value for the Gold Cup.
Yeah, I'll come back to your first point, first of all, yeah. Bit embarrassing really, the race. The other 3 jockeys want to have a bit of a look at themselves and start trying a bit harder. It didn't look great. That's just not good. No, it's not good enough for them just to be leaving them and have it just solo completely. I know the 3 others are from the same yard, but come on lads, put in a bit more of an effort than that. As regards the Gold Cup, not for me. I think he had the perfect storm the 2 years that he won it. I think again last week, New Year's Day, his jumping is just a little bit in and out. He's always been like that. He's just getting on in years. I don't like backing older horses in the Gold Cup. I'd always try and take a chance. A horse hasn't been there before, and even see something there like Manel Indo. It seems to have taken a lot out of him last year's win. But I think far and away the most interesting thing to come out of this race is what Willie Mullins is having to go with Leopardstown for the ground for staying chasers. He was asked, where are you going to run this horse next? He's asked. Now, a little bit of whinging and crying, saying there's no races. Like, there are races if you want to run them on less than ideal conditions, maybe, a little bit shorter than ideal, maybe carry a penalty, maybe it's a little too close to Cheltenham. But this is actually a little bit worrying now for the Dublin Racing Festival, that he's having a go at them, but the ground, basically saying the chase track is not suitable for staying chasers, basically called it glorified summer jumping ground. Gordon Elliott had a cut at them last year, basically said he wasn't running Envoy Allen on it because the ground is too fast. Last week they're having to water it during racing. They've had the guts of, they've had over 40 mils of rain I think in the week before, and it's still riding on the fast side. Now, I don't know what they're going to do about this, but when you have your 2 top trainers are cribbing about it the whole time, I'd say you've got a fairly significant problem. And what's going to want to run in those races come early February. I do wonder actually last year did 1 or 2 Willie Mullins horses get injured at that meeting or something. Like Monkfish wasn't the same horse afterwards. He was brilliant. He had 2 runs at Leopardstown there in the middle of the season, and then on the Wellman at Cheltenham and injured at Punchestown. Was there something in that? So I wonder are there a few scars there. It will be interesting to see whatever about the hurdle strike. It's going to be very interesting to see what turns up in these good chases that weekend.
And Tony, is the deal there that once the new year kicks in, Leopardstown don't want to put too much water on the track because of the flat season, obviously? Or is that just rumour mill stuff? Is it just that they can't get enough water on it to have a good enough effect? What's the deal there? Because that was the rumour that was sort of going around, that the flat trainers all said, stop watering Leopardstown for our spring meetings, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't honestly know. I'm sure it's something to do with watering and things like that. Obviously, you'd see the odd flat meeting there when the ground rides a certain way. Jockeys are looking to come as wide as possible, nearly out onto what is the chase track or close to it. I don't know. And I suppose the fact that the flat season and the National Hunt season can be quite close together at Leopardstown. They'll be finishing up their last jumps meeting in March, and I think there is a flat meeting in March. If not, then there's early April and plenty of racing.
It's very close, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's hard to manage everything, but yeah, it's not ideal if you're advertising as a flagship meeting when your 2 top trainers are saying, well, don't really want to run or stay in chasers there, and maybe don't want to run or chasers full stop.
Yeah, it's a very interesting angle and one that we will watch unfold in the build-up to the Dublin Racing Festival. Before we move on from the open chasers, we must touch upon Shishkin. Obviously, he made his belated seasonal reappearance, but it was worth waiting for. Incredibly impressive at Kempton. Barry, you couldn't help but be impressed. It was sort of a 9 out of 10 performance. You're really sort of scraping the barrel if you're looking to find holes in him. I mean, I wasn't, given the hype beforehand, I actually wasn't expecting him to be as impressive as he was on the day.
Yeah, I would have been a little bit the same, and especially on Kempton being such a sharp track, he can at times race a little behind the bridle, but no, I thought he was brilliant. Travelled away nicely. He was still a little bit lazy at times, but when Nico set him alight early in the straight, he was brilliant. Still goes a little bit left, but obviously going to Cheltenham, that's going to suit him fine. But I thought he showed great pace and just showed his class. And obviously I'm been a big Anorgamine fan all the way through, but I was really, of what he did last year as a novice was really good, but I thought he raised the bar again with this run. So no, that will be some clash if that happens in the Clarence House. But you'd have to be really impressed by him on the day. And I was just wondering where you took the one off from Vanessa that you didn't give him 10 out of 10.
I don't know, just like perfection. It's like a unicorn. It doesn't actually exist, Barry. I don't like to give 10s out willy-nilly. But actually, you might as well get off the fence now. If they meet in the Clarence House, so not Cheltenham, if they meet in the Clarence House at Ascot, who would you side with, Barry? Because we know you're a big Energumen fan. We know you're a big Shishkin fan. Around Ascot, who would you side with?
Oh, you're splitting hairs, and maybe going right-handed might suit an Energumen, because it might be the little thing that could affect Shishkin. He only goes fractionally left, but all it takes is a fraction, a little. It might cost him a half a length, I don't know, but they're two classy horses, and it'll be exciting when they do meet.
It's a very exciting division, full stop, and Shishkin is now 11 to 10 for the champion chase. We can move on to the open hurdlers, plenty to get through here. Barry, quick mention to Sharjah, obviously winning a 4th Matheson hurdle. Is that the best anyone's got to throw at Honeysuckle now in the champion hurdle division? That for me now, it seems like a pretty weak division with a lot of people, a lot of horses deciding to go chasing, whichever way you want to look at it. But it seems like we're going through a bit of a lull in the 2 mile hurdle. And Sharjah, for me, he does what he does around Leopardstown, but is he a legitimate champion hurdle contender?
Well, he's been placed twice in 2 champion hurdles, so he is a contender.
We're not talking about placing, Barry. We want wins only. We'll
get to that, Vanessa. So Honeysuckle, obviously brilliant last year. I thought Zana here, he showed the level of form that I thought he was capable of. He hadn't got the shot at last season. I thought that was a brilliant run. He'd be better suited by a stiffer track, slower ground, all those things that play to his strengths. Sam Rye, who I won the county hurdle on 2 years ago, another horse we thought was going to be do an awful lot better than he did last year. I thought he stepped forward again. So that was, for me, they're 2 very interesting horses for the champion hurdle. But then the one you're forgetting about as well then is Appreciated. We're waiting to see him. I'm not sure when he comes out, but he's staying hurdling. And the performance he put in the Supreme, you'd have to take note on that. If he turns up with that level of form, he might be the one to give Honeysuckle most to do.
That is very true. That is very true. I'll take that from you. Sorry, Barry. I feel like I had an early dig at you there, and then you made some very valid points. Sharjah is now 10 to 1 for the champion hurdle. If anyone does fight like that about him, but as Barry's pointed out, there's probably cases to be made for plenty more in there taking on Honeysuckle. Tony, let's move on to what has become my favourite division of the National Hunt season so far, the staying hurdlers. Classical Dream versus Flooring Porter over in Leopardstown. Drama about the start, drama about the race itself. What did you make of the contest in the end?
Yeah, the start played a part. It wasn't an ideal start. Classical Dream robbed whatever 5 or 6 lengths. But my number one takeaway is that the second doesn't really want to win. I thought he got close enough to him at points that if he wanted to press him, but it's just in the finish that he's just hanging in behind and cocking his jaw and he doesn't want to know. Looking back on his Navan run where he fell, I just think his temperament is getting the better of him. He's lugging about this way and that between his hurdles. And I wouldn't trust him at all going bidding for a back-to-back stayers hurdle. I'd say Connections have done a brilliant job to keep a lid on him to this point. But the problem now is he just has to lead now, because I don't think he wants to go buy a horse that's of broadly equivalent ability, and everyone knows he has to lead. and there's no way he's getting a soft lead. He had the element of surprise last season where people were saying Leopardstown was a fluke. It wasn't a fluke, he got the job done of course, but this time round I think you're almost guaranteed there's going to be a strong pace, because there'll be something that's going to set up his backside or even want to lead him in the stairs, and that'll probably Classical Dream, I don't know, will he want to lead again? I think that was just a product of the start, and the horse kind of made up the jockey's mind. But yeah, Flooring Porter's the one negative I would take away from it rather than any major positive.
Okay, very interesting. And Barry, would you concur with that or disagree?
No, I disagree. He does hang in left. He did that last season in the Stairs Hurdle. He did in Leopardstown when he won this race, and he nearly ducked off the track at the back of the last hurdle. So that's his way. You're not going to change that. I do think he's a very good horse, and he is 6 rising 7. So there is still potential for improvement in him. But I was really impressed by the winner. We mentioned on the last show Patrick Mullins was comparing him to maybe Big Bucks or English Dreamer, and he shaped like one here this week. To go as he did from the front, he was running with the choke out, he was doing too much. Flooring Porter was up his tail. I would agree with Tony, he's hanging in behind him, but that's how he goes. I suppose if he was in front, that would be better for him. But I think if Classical Dream was settled behind the strong pace, the way he travels, the pace he's shown, he's a supreme novice hurdle winner. I'd love to see him just sit in behind a few, follow. He would have some level of pace. But then don't forget Champ, who obviously won an Ascot as well before Christmas. He brings a very strong level of form too, so it's shaping up to a very, very hot Stairs Hurdle.
It really is. And Barry, just a quick note going back to the start. Obviously, it's been well covered, I think. But if you were Danny Mullins, how cross would you have been at what ended up happening, which I think was just a victim of circumstance to a sort of series of unfortunate events which led to it. But how pissed off would you have been, seriously?
Yeah, no, I think it was just circumstance, but you're on a tricky horse and he comes wide to try and keep out of trouble. So he paid the price for that. But I'm sure they'll just take their chance and line him up and hope he doesn't charge the tape at Cheltenham when he goes next. So he's a difficult horse, there's no doubt about that. I'm sure Danny was raging at the time, and I'd say he had a few choice words when he was galloping past the starter, but that's racing, what do you do? It was just one of those things.
So on the Stairs Hurdlers then, obviously Tony is a negative on Flooring Porter, a big negative, and a bit indifferent on Classical Dream. Barry, big fan of Classical Dream, but Barry, you're also a big fan of Champ. If Champ went the Stairs Hurdlers way, would you think that he has a touch of class over Classical Dream? But now it sounds like actually you think Classical Dream has the class.
Well, Classical Dream has the class on his Supreme Novice Hurdle win. And then he's proven himself twice now over 3 mile. But Champ is a very, very classy horse. If he was to turn up in the Stairs Hurdle in the form he was in at Ascot and allow for improvement on that run being his first run, that's, to me, the two of them are pulling away from the field, and Flooring Porter's next best.
Yeah, it really is a division, all joking aside, it's a division that I genuinely do love and I'm really looking forward to this year. Barry, very quick word on Epatante. I was actually very impressed with her, a bit like Shishkin fell into that category for me of, I wasn't quite expecting that from her. I know the race fell apart somewhat, but she's still going to have to build on that to get near Honeysuckle, isn't she?
Yeah, I was impressed with myself as well. Not So Sleepy stood at the start. She was left in front. She got a bit keen. She jumped brilliant, showed great enthusiasm. Probably didn't finish out as well for that enthusiasm through the middle part of the race. But I thought it was a step back in the right direction. But she has another bit to go to catch Honeysuckle and Co.
And I think, just last thing with you, Barry, I think you wanted to give Danny Mullins a special mention for his ride on Stormy Island at Cheltenham on New Year's Day in the Relkill Hurdle, didn't you? You were impressed with that as well. Danny's riding out of his skin at the moment. He
is riding out of his skin, but Danny proved that last year when he got the spare ride in Flooring Porter. Gave him a brilliant ride from the front. So I don't think there is a jockey who's better from the front at the minute than Danny Mullins. He's brilliant. But then on the flip side, he showed how patient he was and how good he is to come from off the pace in King George. So I thought 2 brilliant pieces of riding in 2 top class races by a jockey who's only second string or third string in Willie's Yard, but he's making the most of every opportunity he gets.
He really is, and a great guy to boot. I think we can agree on that. Let's move on to the novice chasers. Again, so much to get through here. And Tony, everyone's gone mad for Galopin Des Champs. Literally gone mad for him, and as a result, his price for the Brown Advisory Novice Chase at the festival is ridiculously short. Are you in a pro camp, or are you against him at this stage?
He was brilliant. Last horse I can remember doing anything like that. Leopardstown was nickname, and that's a long time ago. He kicked on after that, won a lot of grade ones, a lot of grade races in Ireland. Just maybe he didn't win a grade one, he won a hell of a lot of grade races anyway. Galvin, it's just all price at the minute. Like, he's 7-4 for that 3 mile race off the back of a beginner's chase. I just can't really get with him at that type of thing. You just be looking for something, maybe an each way angle into the race, or something else. That's going to maybe show up a bit better when it steps up to 3 miles for the first time. For instance, over fences like Capadano, a stablemate. Just wouldn't be totally sure he's a pure 3 miler. You know, he was running over 2 miles last year. He was very good over 2.5 in the Martin Pipe. The Punchestown race, he won over 3 miles. That was a very slowly run race. Not a million that they keep him at this trip. We do know that they can have a movable feast with some of their targets for the novices. So, yeah, look, brilliantly impressive, but it's just the price does seem very short.
Very short, and you're right, in Willie Mullins land, we don't know where any of these horses are going to go until about, declarations, basically. Barry, the point I thought, just in terms of, obviously, it take, even if you're blind... Well, no, that's a ridiculous statement, but anyone could see that this was a pretty impressive performance from a novice chaser. But the one thing that I thought watching it is, we know Willie barely ever schools these horses, the chasers, and yet he looked like he'd been doing it all his life, this horse.
Yeah, you could say that Willie. You couldn't say it about Willie, but I know his novice chasers at times have looked like they've maybe lacked a bit of practice, but this I didn't. And likewise with Blue Lord, both horses were foot perfect, but you could only be impressed with them. But I'd agree with Tony, the price, it's desperate short. But, if you take Bob Ollinger into account, you'd imagine 3 mile would be the route they'd want to go.
Yeah, and then sticking with this sort of division, bringing it over to the UK, Barry, obviously we were really looking forward to Brave Man's Game versus Ahoy Senior at Kempton, and it did happen, but for me, again, just didn't really feel like Ahoy Senior tipped up on the day, and all those mistakes, he was just knocking lengths out of him, I felt.
No, I don't think he turned up on the day, and the mistakes for me were a reflection on the horse wasn't going. He went down the back straight in Newbury on his previous win, where he won 31 lengths, and he's just powering away from the field. He's winging fences, he's charging, he's taking everything on. Where in Kempton, he wasn't going forward, and it wasn't that it was going too hard. It wasn't that the track was too sharp. He won an Aintree as well, big flat track. Last year he beat Brave Man's Game. So I felt he was a little bit flat. There was a lot of talk about this serious piece of work he did the week before the race, and I just wonder, did he maybe do a bit much that day? Because to me he underperformed. The mistakes, as I say, were a reflection of him not travelling, not carrying. So I don't think he turned up. He'd Kilteely Briggs, who's right on the 37, on his tail at the fourth last when he missed that. He was a beaten horse with that mistake. And he beat Kilteely Briggs 10 lengths, who's rated 137. So he had another £10 in hand on him, and that's as far as he could beat him. So I think he's a lot better than that, but give credit to the winner. He was really impressive. He jumped brilliantly again. He'd probably enjoy a stiffer track, although Paul is toying with the ideas of keeping for Aintree. I was reading lately though that he might just go to Cheltenham now. So interesting, but I don't think Brave Man's Game had to beat as much on the day as we thought he would have.
Yeah, agreed. And just focusing on Brave Man's Game, Barry, for a moment, just in terms of his running style, it's pretty rare you see a horse, his style of running, in that when he has that, Harry just sits on top of him with that loopy rein, as if he's in cruise control. Can you tell me, is that from a jockey's point of view, is that because he can't go any faster and he's at his max, or is that just because he's got that mentality that once he's set at a certain pace, he just is happy to stay there on that loopy rein? It's rare you see a horse like that. It
is, but that's mostly just a horse who's relaxed. He's happy to travel, and he travels at the race pace. He isn't keen, he isn't lazy. He's so measured at his fences, you can sit there and be confident. He's like riding an old timer. You just sit and enjoy yourself, pop away. So no, I wouldn't think of it any great reflection on anything, only that he's just relaxed, which is a brilliant thing going into any festival.
just a lovely ride, whichever way you look at it. Tony, sticking with the novice chasers, obviously Ferny Hollow really stepped up on his debut to go ahead and win at Cheltenham. Go to Leopardstown and win and beat Riviere de Tel. That was a matchup I was really looking forward to, and I thought the mare put in a stellar performance as well, but Ferny Hollow just too good on the day.
A brilliant performance out of Ferny Hollow. I never was his greatest fan as a bumper horse, because I think he got beaten the first couple of days. It sort of went off him a bit, but brilliant. Took away a whole great asset, which was front running. She jumped very well, but he just jumped amazing. And she's come at him in the straight. Now her head is a little bit in the air, and I think that's because she wasn't able to lead. But even with the weight concession, he's kind of well on top. So really a brilliant performance. I don't really want to be rushing to oppose him in an Oracle at this stage. Very high level of form, very fast time, and with only 2 chase starts and 1 hurdle start, so there has to be loads of improvement to come with him too.
2-1 Barry about the Arkle now for Ferny Hollow. Would you be with him for the race at this point at that price?
Oh, you couldn't oppose him in that run. The filly in second, Riviere de Tel, she doesn't get so much weight off him come Cheltenham. So no, I thought it was a brilliant performance. The only concern you could have is that he mightn't just get home as well because he runs with the choke out and with his style of racing. But he won the bumper as a younger horse, and I thought he kept going really well in Leopardstown, considering he had been keen and he'd gone so fast. So no, I thought it was a fairly faultless performance.
And his jumping had really improved from in a proper race now. I was amazed to see, because I sort of crabbed it a little bit on debut, but actually it was a different kettle of fish altogether when he's able to go that pace in a higher rated race.
Yeah, it was definitely. But when you look back at his Punchestown win previously, he wasn't good early, but actually over the last 4 fences he was really good. So I think he learned an awful lot through the early part of the race, and when he did get his confidence and got the speed up over the last 4, he was brilliant, and he showed that in Leopardstown. Then from word go he was good, and he will improve again. There was 1 or 2 that got in close to where he just he probably in a bit of a hurry got himself in a little bit too close. I'd say with more experience under his belt he'll find he'll measure his fences better.
And Barry, just sticking with you, I know you wanted to give a mention to Fury Road, who won the Neville's Hotel Novices Chase as well, overturning the other Gigginstown horse that was the first string. But it was a good ride, I thought, on the day. But I'm not sure I'd be with him. Is he 10-1 for the Brown Advisory's Novices Chase at the Cheltenham Festival now? I'm not sure I'd be with him at that price.
Yeah, it was a good performance on the day. I'd say the drying ground suited him. I had a big question mark over him with his finish in the Drinmore. He didn't see that out so well, and I just wonder the slower run race in Leopardstown, it might have just played to his strengths where it didn't to Vanillier, who was outpaced from 3 out and looked a slow horse in it. But he'll be a better horse, I think, probably going for the National Hunt Chase or something like that. Run Well Fred ran really well. He was second the Irish Grand National last year. He's backed it up running the Tri-Town. It's a good level of form, but I think the race was run to suit the winner on the day, and whether he can take it to the next level again come March is another question.
Yeah, I'm taking that form as a touch sketchy at this stage as well. Let's move on to the novice hurdlers. There's so much to get through again. We saw so many nice types. And Sir Gerhard, Tony, I was really taken with. But I was sort of waxing lyrical, in fact, afterwards when I saw that performance. But I'm not sure you were in the same camp as me.
Visually brilliant. Jumped very well. Just they can't all be machines, can they? The time was moderate, although admittedly he was quite quick from 3 out. But the form of it there, Highland Charge had been run over in Navan the time before that. Ash Tree Meadow was eye-catching on its previous start, but it was a really slowly run race at Fairy House. You've no idea what kind of level he ran to. The first day, the key horse, the horse's best form of a hurdles meet and greet came out of it. So yeah, I just think he's not one I'd be just getting carried away with yet. Champion Bumper, is that form really working out? Fits and starts. Punchestown race isn't really working out. Kilcrit, O'Toole won up and down Ryle, but was kind of workmanlike enough to do so. So no, I think because he's won at Leopardstown on the 26th of December and he's Cheveley Park and he's Champion Bumper winner, just don't know now. I just think maybe he'd be a bit on the price the next day. And the same with that Journey with me, Journey for me, whatever his name is, Henry the Bromhead's horse. Look, everyone's saying it's a graded race beforehand. It didn't look like a graded race now on the day. I'm not sure that was much of a race either. like Gordon Elliott's horse, Manila Cocoon, or I don't think anyone is thinking is a Cheltenham horse. Like, he would have been right up his arse now if he'd have jumped a hurdle. He jumped terrible, and he was still closing down the Robco horse at the line. Kilcrit, something's gone wrong with Kilcrit on the turn in now. Maybe it's happened before then, he's lost his action. But he's just hanging in and looks like he doesn't fancy it in the straight where there's no hurdle there. So that's not really his form now. Maybe he has a physical issue, needs a bit of time off. So I think both of those now, they're single figures, I think, for both of Cheltenham targets. Yeah, maybe the next day they will prove it at graded level, but to me, they're going to be favourites for whatever graded races they're running in. And I'd be inclined to try and get both of them beat, whether it be the Dublin Racing Festival or wherever they pitch up.
It's a negative on Sir Gerhard, who's 5-1 currently for the Supreme, and a negative on Journey with Me, who's 6-1 for the Ballymore. Tony, I just wanted to ask you very briefly, are you reading anything too much into this whole chat about Henry de Bromhead's stable form at the moment? Obviously, Envoy Allen kind of fell in, then he had Journey with Me, which was a bit of a standout performance of his Christmas, but other than that, a little bit disappointing elsewhere. Are you reading anything into that?
I'm not the greatest believer in stable form in these very small pockets and patches, as in weeks and fortnights and things like that. Now, someone saying to me a trainer's having a bad... Now, Jessica Harrington is out of form at the minute. Now, I 100% accept that. The woman has gone 2 months without a winner, like 60 or 70 runners and things like that. I would totally accept that. And then she's kind of very streaky. She'll come to Punchestown, she'll have 6 winners or something. And she was absolutely flying at the end of the flat season. And I'd say Horban, kind of a mixed yard, is feeding into that a little bit. Like, you can't be everything. Willie Mullins can be everything, but the rest of them can't. So the Henry de Bromhead thing, I don't know. But just coming back to last year, like, he had the perfect storm at Cheltenham. Everything went right. Then he went on and won a Grand National. What was his highest number of Cheltenham winners in a year prior to that? What, 2 maybe?
2, yeah.
Yeah, like, is he just regressing to the mean? Is he going to be a trainer now that's going to have 6 or 7 winners at Cheltenham? Willie Mullins and Gordon Elliott do that most seasons. Expecting them to be that good might be a little bit of a too high of an expectation. Like last year might be the exception rather than the rule. So yeah, I'm sorry, I haven't really answered your question there about the stable form. I don't know. Some of them did run terribly. I haven't seen anything really in the steward report about them coughing or things like that. There were a few Jessica Harringtons that said they'd scoped wrong, so that kind of adds up a little bit. But as regards his, something may come out about that afterwards, but I don't really know.
Either way, it's very interesting going forward, and there'll be lots of short priced Henry de Bromhead horses between now and Cheltenham, and it will just be interesting to see how the stable form goes. One yard who obviously is in still brilliant form and seems to never have a bad week, month or year is of course Paul Nicholls. He took the Challow Hurdle again, Barry Geraghty with Stage Star, who's now 8-1 for the Ballymore. I didn't think it was much of a Grade 1 race, if I'm being deadly honest, but he did it nicely all the same.
No, it probably wasn't, but he did it well, and he's 3 from 3 over hurdles, and he's been very impressive in everything he's done. But I'm not sure if this division just has shaped up fully yet. So it's going to be interesting. Classical Getaway is in on Thursday in Clonmel. He could be one who could step in here. So I think we just need to see one put his head above the water. But Stage Star he's a good horse. He's worthy to be there towards the head of the market, but he wouldn't just look like a superstar yet.
Yeah, a bit of a murky old scene, I would agree with that. The Triumph Hurdle category had the juveniles had a bit of a shake-up over the festive season. We had Phil Dorr winning in Leopardstown, and then Porticello winning the Grade 1 at Chepstow, the finale hurdle. I was impressed with Phil Dorr. I was impressed with both of them. I thought, what I loved about the Porticello race, just on a side note, is, and I get that... Jamie Moore is in a position to be able to do this, but he really learnt lessons from the Doncaster run, and then when he was interviewed he made that very clear that basically he made a mistake at Doncaster and he was going to make much more use of Porticello in the Grade 1 finale hurdle, and that's exactly what he did. And then bang, and he goes into the winners enclosure, and just it kind of made me think how we're not used to jockeys being self-critical, because of course not all of them are in such safe positions with their jobs, and so obviously they don't want to say anything negative, whereas actually the Moore team are a bit of a revelation. But I do guess that I get that that's sort of because of the circumstances there with the father-son operation. But either way, they learned a lot from Doncaster, and they went in and won a Grade 1 with him. But would he be a Triumph Hurdle horse for you, Barry, going forwards, Porticello?
I think he's the right type. He stays so well. That's his big thing. But his jumping for me is a little bit of a question mark. He can jump well, but he can be very erratic at times. And he was that way when he was in Wetherby on his previous start. Likewise Doncaster, and again in Chepstow. So I think he is a good horse. But I just worry that not necessarily he's going to wind up on the ground, but he could just make a bad enough mistake to wipe out all chance. Where Phil Dore, although he wasn't tidy at the last in Leopardstown, he is very good. He's also a horse with very little experience, racing experience. So he's improving the whole time. I like him. I was very relaxed, very laid back, and likewise he stays really well. So I think they're two very good horses, but for me I'd be going with Phil Dore.
Yeah, I'll be with Phil Dore too. He's not necessarily a standard sort of Triumph Hurdle type horse, but he looks to have a huge engine and tick lots of boxes, and he's such a professional. I thought, even though he's had that limited experience compared to many, he seems like a real professional. Tony, let's move on to any other business and picking up a few pieces elsewhere. I think you like the look of Heaven Help Us for the Mares Hurdle now.
I do, yeah. Mares Hurdle, very different race to what it's been in previous years. Often framed you'd have a short price Willie Mullins horse, a Benny Des Dieu, or a Concertista, or an Annie Power going back, or a Quevega. Very open race this year. I think it's going to be one of those 4 or 5 to 1, the field race, unless something very strange happens. Thought the Leopardstown race in 29 was probably quite informative. Royal Kehala, very worthy winner on the day, but a couple of takeaways that she probably isn't really a Cheltenham horse. Obviously she's disappointed at the meeting last year. I don't think she hurdles well enough as well. But the biggest thing was the trainer said after, like, the ground wasn't soft enough for her in Leopardstown. The shielding is soft. She's basically looking for English heavy, I would say, to be competitive in a mare's hurdle, to slow the rest of them down. Very good horse under her ideal conditions, which is Ireland in the middle of the winter. She's very hard to beat, but Cheltenham in March, unless it's going to be soft heavy ground, I don't really like her for that. Tell Me Something Girl, she ran really well. She came out best horse at the weights in that race, and is an obvious player. But I think there's a bit more in Heaven Help Us. Even though she was nicely into weight, she had no penalty. She has a brilliant Cheltenham record now. Obviously won the Coral Cup last year, won a maiden hurdle there. She ran in Shishkin Supreme, and she was Shishkin locked her wrong that day. She had everything go wrong for her that day as well, and she would have been a massive price. And then she's run okay in the international hurdle a few weeks ago over 2 miles. Should be too sharp for her. But the big angle with her is the cheek pieces, like they haven't been on since last spring. So I presume they're holding them back for the mare's hurdle. Would make sense. I think while Tell Me Something Girl is going to be better in now when the meeting of levels in March, I think the cheek pieces might be enough to get a bit of improvement out of Hennessy's mare. I think she's a bit. I actually backed her straight after the race, and I think she's 12 or 14 to 1 for that. I think in an open year with her track form and the little bit of potential for improvement, is a bit overpriced anyway. And the other thing, I was just going to mention with a view to Cheltenham, the Pertemps qualifier at Leopardstown on the 28th, I thought that looked a proper race. I'd expect that to be a strong piece of form. You've the right horses coming to the fore, the kind of unexposed ones. Panda Boy, he just looks a pure 3 miler now. He'll stay all day. He might want now a bit of soft ground at Cheltenham, but if he's there involved at all coming to the last, I expect him to be staying on well. And the Emmett Mullins horse, Winter Fog, he didn't jump the first 2 great and came from the back. I thought Danny Mullins, he got a lovely trip through. Now he sort of wriggled his way through into a lovely position, and the only problem was the horse got there a bit too soon. And he travelled really nice. You know, he'd be one now if they got a bit of nice ground at Cheltenham. You could definitely see him travelling and going very close. There have been horses that I think they've looked non-stayers in the Irish qualifiers for this. I think was it Presenting Percy look a non-stayer at one point, or Maldini maybe it was actually. The other Pat Kelly horse didn't seem to get home in some of the Irish qualifiers Winterfog might be similar. When he gets a bit of nice ground, he could absolutely thrive in it. So yeah, now of course we don't have a clue what the English handicapper's going to do, but they'd definitely be two now that would be, to me, would be big players if they're anyway reasonably weighted. Obvious, but should be thereabouts.
Oh, plenty to take away there, and heaven help us, just for viewers, there is, yeah, like Tony said, roughly 12-14 to 1 for the mare's hurdle. So on the case that Tony Keenan has just made, that price might not hang around for too long. Barry, quick mention to Mighty Potter winning a Grade 1. Largely debut disappointed on the day and ran a funny race, but Tony reliably informs me that I think he bled on the day, and the race didn't probably go that well for the eventual winner, but he looks a very nice type, but I'm not sure. Well, actually, would he be a supreme type for you, Barry? Is he's a big enough price in there against what I think are some potentially speedier individuals?
Yeah, it looks a very classy race. Obviously, John Bon and Constitution Hill at the top. Sir Gerhard, you'd question him as well. But no, I thought it was a good performance. And he has a lot of pace. He showed a bit of improvement from Ferny House in the Royal Bond when he was third. But no, I thought he was good in Leopardstown. And I'd say he's a horse with his size and an age. He can improve again between here and Cheltenham. So at probably 14 to 1 or something like that, you could have worse bets than him as an each way for the Supreme. But there's a good bit of strength at the top of the market.
Just a quick word on Blue Lord as well.
Yeah, I thought Blue Lord was really good in Naas. It was a competitive race, and he made it a one horse race. Good level of form over hurdles. He was keen over hurdles, but seems far more relaxed. His jumping is brilliant. So albeit he has a lot in his plate taking on Ferny Hollow, he just could be the value each way in the race. But I thought it was just a real good performance in Naas, and he's a horse going the right way.
Okay, we like that. We'll take that. And Tony, just a quick mention from you with Mighty Potter. Would you be in any way interested with him for spring festivals over the 2 miles, or is he one to sort of keep an eye on for further down the line at this stage?
Yeah, both. I liked him at Leopardstown. Largy debut just didn't turn up between the bleeding and the shifting right. Trainer wouldn't have a good record in that type of race. I think I looked this up, and the only Grade 1 2-mile novice hurdle winner he ever had was a lucky one, St. John, when a short one of Willie Mullins fell in this same race. But Mighty Potter, I know the 3-stripe life made a hames of the second last, and that put him on the back foot, but I also thought he was close enough jumping the last, and Mighty Potter was always holding him, lugging this way and that. Just seems like a horse is going to keep improving. I definitely wouldn't be negative on him. I think he's possibly been a little bit underestimated. Now, I suppose you can argue they're a little bit in a heap behind, but he doesn't seem like a sort of horse going to do an awful lot when he hits the front. And Ferny House was a bit of a mess of a race, and maybe he's a bit like Field Door. I think both of those might want soft ground. They weren't as visually impressive at Ferny House, albeit in better race than they were at Down Royal, and then really visually good on the softer ground at Leopardstown.
Okay, so lots to take out of this novice hurdling division then. So Gerhard a negative, Mighty Potter a positive, a few left field thoughts there, lots to take away from basically the whole of the Christmas recap from the boys. Some different angles there, hopefully, than what you have heard already. Let's focus in very briefly, Barry, at the week ahead. It's pretty quiet now. From now for a good couple of weeks, we have a bit of a quiet spell both in England and Ireland, but the Tolworth hurdle you will be looking at with great interest, courtesy of Constitution Hill. How is he? What's the update? Have you heard anything? He obviously goes here, all systems go, it seems.
Yeah, Nico sent me a photo of him the other day in the stable, so he's very happy with him. Work is good, in good form, goes here. He should be hard to beat. The strongest level of form looks like Might Eye. The horse is 14 lengths behind him. So there's plenty there with chances, but as I say, he looks the pick of the rest. And he's 14 lengths to find with Constitution Hill, who you'd like to think will have improved for both the fitness and experience of that run in Sandown. Slower ground shouldn't be an issue for him. He wouldn't want it too fast. Anyway, so a horse who generally wants a bit of juice wouldn't mind a little bit more. So no, I believe that everyone's happy with him, and I'd be happy watching him on Saturday.
You'll look forward to his next stepping stone. A few people sort of been whispering, wondering, musing about whether John Bon and Constitution Hill will go to the Supreme. Obviously both from the same yard, but you've made the point before that at this stage you can't imagine Constitution Hill needing much further, but also B, he's run plenty in this race in the past, Nicky, so it's not as if he's sort of the sort of trainer who'd want to split them if they both need and want the 2 miles at this stage in their career. So I can't see them going different ways, just at this point anyway.
Not at this point, no. And I was chatting with Nicky after Constitution Hill's last win, and he said at the minute he doesn't need to go any further. So wait and see. There's a lot of water to go under the bridge between here and Cheltenham. But he wouldn't be afraid to run too. Sprinter Sacre and Spirit Sun were 2nd and 3rd in the Supreme. We were 2nd and 3rd at Joss's Hill and Vanna too another year. So no, he's not afraid to run 2 of his fancy ones together.
Who beat Sprinter Sacre in that Supreme?
Alfaraf beat Spirit Sun. I was in Spirit Sun and Sprinter Sacre was 3rd.
Hell of a race. Let's move on to tracker time, because we've had a boom time when it comes to the tracker horses, courtesy of, most of our viewers will be expecting me to say Tony, because he just delivers tracker horses for us. But actually this time, you, Barry Geraghty, Master McShee, in he went in a grade 1. Tony making a case before the show started that you get double points for that. I'm not sure about that, but you must have been delighted all the same.
Oh, it was a great performance. I was delighted. He caught me eye up that day in Gorham when he was 3rd to Bob Ollinger. Well beaten, 16 lengths. But his first run, he improved a lot for it. Ian Power gave him a brilliant ride. Dropped him in, crept, they went fast on heavy ground and just delivered him with a sustained challenge. It just only barely get up in the line. Paddy Corkery, also his trainer, has only 4 horses at home. And to get a horse back who bled towards the end of last season, and produce him like this for his first grade 1 and Ian's first grade 1. So it was a brilliant success for both of them.
And Tony, have you had any tracker winners yet? I mean, you must have done.
No joy at all so far. No, very impressed with Barry's picking there, and yeah, like that grip of the training out of Paddy Corkery, given the backdrop of the bleeding and so on. Yeah, but a proper race to be winning, and I think he enjoys his winners. He was talking about how he was going to have to find somewhere that was serving a bit of Guinness after 8 o'clock or something on the way home. He was going to celebrate, and why not?
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of the great festive stories. But Barry, your tracker horse for this time around, sorry, I forgot to ask you what your tracker horse is from the last 10 days or so of racing.
Yeah, I thought, Am I Right, who was 4th behind Journey With Me in Leopardstown, Kilcrut 3rd, Manila Crooner in 2nd. I'd agree with Tony that I'm not fully convinced that this race was just quite as strong as everyone was making it out to be, but still this had caught my eye. Travelled really well, jumped brilliantly, jumped big. He's a horse who's going to improve for the experience, but he's a horse with a future the way he jumped. Travelled, kept going nicely, first run, having only won a point at his only other start. So I thought it was a smart performance in what you would say is a good race, but I don't think it's the grade 1 it's meant to be.
Interesting, very interesting. And Tony, your tracker horse, I'm sure you probably had a long list to choose from after all this Christmas racing, but who did you settle on in the end?
Yeah, he's not probably, the obvious tracker horse and things. I'm just going to give him another chance. I think a horse called Cotty McAvenny Goal, great name. I think it's some West Ham United related famous goal from way back in the 80s or something. Maybe even before back than that. No, he was 6th in the 2 mile handicap hurdle at Leopardstown on the 27th. I'm just going to go back to his previous run at Navan. He was off a break, and I thought he shaped the best horse that day when he was 2nd. Just got given a little bit too much to do in a race that has worked out really well. The winner of the handicap hurdle at Leopardstown came out from behind him. Influential Lady has won a race. It was 4,000 years. Looked like it was going to get involved in Torless when it fell. It was the 5th or the 6th. Now, the Leopardstown race, it looked like there was going to be no pace in it, and Bride's Hill got a soft lead, and I think it was Sean O'Keefe was riding this horse, tried to counteract that by going forward and sat 2nd, which was a good idea in terms of shape of the race, but unfortunately it just doesn't seem to suit this horse. I thought he completely over-raced and looked like he was going to go very close, I think, between the last 2 and just faded out of it. So that kind of looks like a bad run, and I'd say it's anything but. And I think if you can get into a more typical 2 mile handicap hurdle with a bit of pace on, and you can get a little bit of cover, I'd be expecting him to step forward and come back to that kind of Navan form rather than this run, which makes him look kind of just ordinary. I don't think he is. I think he's actually quite well handicapped. and quite unexposed. And he's with a Shane Cawley, very capable trainer with this type of horse, tends to place them well, and I think he'll find a race from someone the next month or so.
Okay, well, we'll put that in the track of the horse with a ridiculous name, very hard to say, but Tony's made a very decent case for a well-handicapped horse there. I was going to go with a very obvious one, but everyone laughed at me for it being too obvious. Another JP McManus horse that I like the look of was Galvin in the Sir Gerhard hurdle at Leopardstown. Just thought he travelled like a good horse. He was obviously making his Irish debut. He was 2 from 2 in France. When Mark Walsh should have asked him to go up into the bridle, he looked to have plenty there in the tank, and then the sort of front few got away from him a little bit, and then he had a very easy time of it up to the line. I just thought he looked like a horse. I mean, it's a pretty obvious one, to be honest with you, but he looked like a horse who had plenty more left in the locker. Not his day at Leopardstown against Sir Gerhard, but definitely one for the future in Galvin. Other than that, I think we have rattled through all the racing from the festive period as best we can. Loads of takeaways, hopefully a few anti-post bets in there. Heaven help us, I'm going off to back her for the Mare's Hurdle, courtesy of Tony, but elsewhere lots of good cases made going forward. We'll be dissecting the Tolworth Hurdle and more in the next episode of Off the Fence. Do hit subscribe on our YouTube channel. My producer keeps telling me to tell you all that. That way you won't miss a single episode, and why would you want to, especially from now until the Cheltenham Festival as we build up to not just Cheltenham but all the big spring festivals. Cannot wait. Hope you've enjoyed this episode. Loads of takeaways for you. Thank you very much for watching. That was Off the Fence.